his actions and his words. Amen.
This House is in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, October 17th, 2023, and Tuesday, October 24th, 2023, to be confirmed. All right, Member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the minutes of the meetings held on October 17th and October 24th be confirmed.
The question is that the aforementioned minutes be confirmed. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby confirmed.
Announcements by Your Honour the Speaker. Messages from Her Excellency the President. Petitions, papers, government notices.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move a resolution.
Give notice.
Beg to give notice of a resolution to approve, in accordance with Section 5 of the Crown Lands Vesting and Disposal Act, the vesting in the National Housing Corporation of a parcel of land situated at Dodds in the parish of St. Philip in this island, more particularly described in the resolution for residential, commercial, and recreational purposes.
Private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills, statements by ministers. Statements by ministers.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, sir, on November 20th, 2018, just short of 5 years ago, I rose in this honourable chamber and delivered a statement that gave effect to what was a historic change to the system of rates of taxes within our corporate sector. The situation facing the country then was that in September 2017 and November 2017, the then minister responsible for international business made a commitment to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, commonly known as the OECD, that Barbados would dismantle the more than 4-decade-old regime. What was particularly unfortunate was that the last government gave the commitment truly in the dead of night, without debate, consultation, or discourse. And worse yet, they did it without any plan for the rest of us to know as to how they would achieve it. This left my government, sir, on assuming office on the 25th of May 2018, with just a matter of months to transform the sector and to place it on a more sustainable path. You will forgive me, sir, if I call some names without the appropriate notice, but I'd like to thank the former minister, the Honourable former member for St. Michael North, Mr. Ronald Toppin, for leading the charge and for putting the country in a position to honour its word, for bringing the following 13 pieces of legislation to this House on December 14th, 2018, which all needed to be passed by December 31st, 2018. I want to also thank the former member, former advisor, Mr. Ben Arundel, and the task force from the private sector, who led the effort for the preparation of these amendments such that Minister Toppin was able to work seamlessly with them. The pieces of legislation relate to the International Business Companies Act, Repeal Bill 2018, the Business Companies Economic Substance Bill 2018, the Companies Amendment Bill 2018, the Corporate Trust and Service Providers Bill 2018, the Foreign Currency Permits Bill 2018, the Property Transfer Tax Amendment Bill 2018, the Shipping Corporations Amendment Bill 2018, the Societies with Restricted Liability Amendment Bill 2018, the Stamp Duty Amendment Bill 2018, the Trust Miscellaneous Provisions Bill 2018, the Value Added Tax Amendment Bill 2018, the Financial Institutions Amendment Bill 2018, the Insurance Amendment Bill 2018. Mr. Speaker, 13 pieces of legislation passed in order to reposition this sector with less than 5 months in government. You perhaps now see why I am truly indebted as leader of this government to the former minister and to the former advisor whose name, and to the members of the private sector who worked. Mr. Speaker, I announced then in 2018 November that Barbados would converge our corporate tax rates to address the concept of ring fencing, with the intention of furthering Barbados's international competitiveness. We simplified the tax code, allowing for only 3 allowances: annual capital allowance, renewable energy allowances, and research and development. This reality, sir, reinforced my government's recognition that tax competitiveness is not equivalent to business competitiveness. Tax incentives alone do not convey a competitive advantage to jurisdictions in attracting business. We know that. There are other factors affecting competitiveness that have to be emphasized and policy reforms accelerated. And these include, sir, 1, removing the regulatory and administrative impediments to decisions; 2, strengthening the institutional framework for streamlining the conduct of business in Barbados; and 3, improving the quality of life and facilitating the participation of persons working in Barbados of economic substance. The truth is, sir, the government started work in earnest, as I said, and it was led at the time by the member for St. Michael South Central in terms of her work to address the issues confronting the country in order to improve our competitiveness at the beginning of 2019. We thank the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central for starting that work for us. The onset of COVID-19 genuinely robbed us of the opportunity to complete all of the necessary reforms, as we had to focus then on survival, focus on the essentials. Indeed, for the better part of 3 years, that became the lot of those of us in this country. This is not, sir, an excuse, but simply the country's reality. Given the acute exposure to the climate crisis, strengthening resilience on all fronts is vital to this country's long-term approach, as it is becoming increasingly difficult for small island developing states to remain an attractive investment option. Sir, countries like Barbados are in a race against time. We face the prospect of the risk associated with investment becoming unattractive. Therefore, we must achieve a predetermined level of economic and financial resilience if we are to attract capital to this region. Indeed, sir, we need to run the race of ensuring that we do not become uninvestable as a region as a result of the onset of the climate crisis. Where we are today, sir, however, must be asked and answered with respect to our corporate tax structure. What has happened in the international environment that is of relevance to us today? On the 1st of July 2021, the OECD and the G20 Inclusive Framework on what is known as the Base Erosion and Profit Sharing, otherwise known as BEPS, the OECD and G20 Inclusive Framework issued a statement on its plan to reform the international taxation rules to address base erosion and profit shifting risk arising primarily from digitalization of the economy globally. In October 2021, the inclusive framework agreed to a two-pillar solution to address the tax challenges arising from the digitization of the economy, commonly known as BEPS 2.0. Let me explain very quickly, sir. Pillar 1 seeks to reallocate some profits and in turn taxes from where the economic activities are conducted to where the markets, that is the customers, are. This is the case even if profits are currently allocated in line with transfer pricing rules. Pillar 1 applies to multinational enterprises with a global turnover above 20 billion euro and profitability above 10%. In other words, profit before tax over revenue. Pillar 1 introduces a minimum effective tax rate of 15% for MNE groups, multinational enterprise groups, with revenue in excess of 750 million euro or 800 million US dollars per their consolidated financial statements via the global anti-base erosion model rules. Hereinafter, I will refer to them as the GLOBE rules. Pillar 2 also includes a subject to tax rule. The subject to tax rule allows a jurisdiction to impose taxes on royalties, interest, and other service payments, including all intra-group service payments, if the treaty partner taxes at a rate below 9%. So, Mr. Speaker, if Barbados had a treaty partner and we kept a rate below 9%, our treaty partner, call it Canada, could then seek to impose a tax on all royalties, all interest payments, and all other service payments in the intra-group transactions. It therefore would leave us exposed, and those companies who are domiciled here exposed to that additional taxation. Mr. Speaker, the momentum in international taxation has rapidly shifted with the advent of BEPS 2.0. The framework has significantly reformed the law, with Pillar 2 implementing for the first time a global minimum tax. Mr. Speaker, Barbados, like many other countries, indeed 139 countries across the world and 95% of the global economy, Mr. Speaker, we committed to the two-pillar plan on the 12th of August 2021 and formally joined the two-pillar plan on the 8th of October 2021. As such, sir, the implementation of this policy framework is necessary to reform the domestic legislative framework accordingly. The GLOBE rules, sir, which are the main pillar rules, Pillar 2 rules, consist as follows. 1, an income inclusion rule which imposes a top-up tax on a parent entity in respect of the income of subsidiaries and permanent establishments that is taxed at less than a 15% minimum effective tax rate. Thank you. 2, a supporting under-tax payment rule, and I should say that the income inclusion rule to which I just referred is referred to as the IIR. A lot of acronyms about the place, sir. But if the public gets confused, have no fear, I would sometimes too, so don't feel no way. A supporting under-tax payment rule, UTPR, which denies deductions or requires an equivalent adjustment in the event that a parent's entity's allocable share of the top-up tax regarding a low-tax constituent entity is not subject to tax under an income inclusion rule. And 3, a qualified domestic minimum top-up tax by which a jurisdiction imposes the 15% minimum tax on constituent entities of in-scope MNEs. The GLOBE rules, sir, are therefore designed to ensure that large multinational enterprises pay a minimum effective tax rate of 15% on the income arising in each jurisdiction in which they operate through the application of a system of top-up taxes in other jurisdictions, an income inclusion rule and/or an under-tax payment rule and/or a qualified domestic minimum top-up tax. Where, for example, profits earned by a group subsidiary located in Barbados are taxed by an effective rate of only 5%, then the new rules will come into play from 2024. Therefore, sir, with the global minimum tax rate of 15%, the jurisdiction where the parent company is based will have the right to charge an additional 10% in taxes on their subsidiaries' profits. This will ensure that even those profits located in Barbados are ultimately subject to an effective tax rate of 15%. Any top-up tax to be paid in the other jurisdiction might be reduced or eliminated by any qualifying domestic minimum tax, which allows Barbados to collect the tax. Sir, at the global level, it is estimated that the Globe Rule implementation will generate an additional annual 200 billion euros or $215 billion in revenue. The allocation of this revenue is, however, uncertain, as this is highly dependent on the country and the company's behavioral response. To date, more than 50 jurisdictions have commenced implementing the Globe Rules. This is the case of Japan, South Korea, and the United Kingdom, which already have draft rules in place. The European Union member states are in the process of implementing them and are completing implementation before the beginning of 2024. Legislation has been tabled in most European Union countries, as well as in Canada, our primary partner, and adoption is expected by year end in most of these jurisdictions. However, sir, the United States and China have not adopted the Globe Rules, and there is no evidence as to when they will move in that direction. The US has adopted the Global Intangible Low Tax Income, otherwise known as GILTI, the GILTI tax provisions in 2017, which are in part similar to the Globe Rules, with the exception that instead of calculating the effective tax rate on a jurisdictional basis, the rules do so at a global level, allowing therefore the blending of highly and lowly taxed income as it is computed. Mr. Speaker, the GILTI minimum rate is currently 10.5%, even though it is expected that it will be increased to 16% in 2026. Even though GILTI provides for more stringent rules for the allocation of expenses, the provision is not considered as equivalent to Globe rules by the BEPS inclusive framework. In the absence of changes, US headquartered companies will be subject to the under-tax payments rule as from 2025. Further, US tax reform may occur in 2025 as many of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act provisions come to an end and will need to be either modified or extended. Sir, in summary, the adoption of the Globe Rules in 2024 by countries with whom we conduct the majority of our business presents the opportunity for our country, Barbados, to review and reform our corporate tax regime, such that we, Mr. Speaker, can shape our future and not simply be a victim of circumstances. Mr. Speaker, it is of note that if there is one constant feature of the international business sector, it is change. And Mr. Speaker, we came to understand this when even within less than 15 years after the foreign sales corporations had been established under the US-Barbados treaties, the European Union opposed it in the WTO, and accordingly, the WTO ruled that it was an inappropriate vehicle for Barbados to be using for the conduct of foreign business at the time. Mr. Speaker, it is fair to say that change has been the constant feature of this sector. And if we had to find an analogy, it would be that of riding a wave or surfing a wave, because with each wave, your movement has to be adept enough to keep riding it. If not, you will fall down, and hopefully you will survive, but there is no such guarantee in turbulent waters. With that, Mr. Speaker, I now propose the following measures. From income year 2024, with effect from the 1st of January 2024, the Income Tax Act, Chapter 73 of the Laws of Barbados be amended to include the following provisions. 1. There shall be a new corporation tax rate of 9%, subject to the following regimes. 1. A company whose gross income is currently below $2 million and which is now registered as a small business under the Small Business Development Act, Chapter 318C, shall be subject to a corporation tax rate of 5.5%. 2. The corporation tax rate that is currently applicable to the insurance business sector of 0% for Class 1 businesses and 2% for Class 2 businesses shall remain. 3. International shipping business will remain taxed under the current tax regime established in 2019, noting that the international shipping industry is out of scope for globe rules, and Barbados' industry, therefore, needs to remain competitive, as in many other countries it will be the same. After consultation with the sector, the Ministry of Finance will advise on whether Barbados should adopt a new regime in the future for international shipping companies from the fiscal year 2025 onwards, but it remains the same for this year. For income year 2024, with effect from 1st of January 2024, and this is the fourth measure. For income year 2024, with effect from January 1st, 2024, with respect to an in-scope multinational enterprise whose ultimate parent entity is in any jurisdiction which has not adopted, not implemented an income inclusion rule and the under-tax profits rule, or whose constituent entities are not subject to an income inclusion rule or under-tax profits rule, the current tax regime established in 2019 shall be maintained and applied accordingly. For such entities, there will therefore be no application of the qualifying domestic minimum top-up tax. It is recognized, sir, that the income year 2024 for a company may begin as early as the 2nd of January 2023 or as late as the 1st of January 2024. Therefore, for the avoidance of any doubt, the new corporation tax rates will only be applicable for the portion of profits in income year 2024 that is earned from the 1st of January 2024. In addition, Mr. Speaker, as of income year 2024, and with effect from the 1st of January 2024, a qualified domestic minimum top-up tax shall be introduced consistent with the globe rules for in-scope companies. This qualified domestic minimum top-up tax shall apply to subsidiaries or permanent establishments of in-scope multinational enterprises, constituent entities, with an ultimate parent entity in a jurisdiction that has introduced an income inclusion rule or an under-tax profit rule. This means, sir, that a top-up tax will be imposed on such constituent entities to to ensure that they are subject to an effective tax rate of 15% as per the Globe rules, or in accordance with the Globe rules. Mr. Speaker, these reforms to the corporation tax regime are fully in line with the Globe rules. They are fully compliant with the Globe rules. Barbados will ensure the qualified domestic minimum top-up tax meets the required standards to qualify for the qualified domestic minimum top-up tax safe harbor. More detailed information on the safe harbor rules and provisions for IFRS 17 accounting standards and deferred tax treatment are outlined in the accompanying policy note that I will lay in this honorable chamber as an appendix to this ministerial statement, sir. The rules will be adapted as necessary in the future to reflect changes in the international standards, peer review results as well, and to ensure that Barbados always remains compliant and remains competitive as a financial center. The Barbados Revenue Authority shall be responsible for the administration of the qualified domestic minimum top-up tax. More specifically, this shall relate to the calculation of the tax base, control, determination, collection, as well as the recovery of the top-up tax. I should advise you, Mr. Speaker, that in accordance with international best practice, the government will introduce a requirement for smoother cash flow to facilitate its fiscal circumstances as follows. Accordingly, effective the 1st of January 2024, in-scope Globe companies will be required to prepay corporation tax on a monthly basis, sir, from income year 2024. I repeat, effective January 1st, 2024, in-scope Globe companies will be required to prepay corporation tax on a monthly basis from income year 2024. Currently, most do on a quarterly basis. For income year 2025, and with effect from the 1st of January 2025, all other companies registered, with the exception of small businesses under the Small Business Development Act, will also be required to prepay corporate taxes on a monthly basis. Mr. Speaker, this brings this jurisdiction in line with international best practice. Monthly prepayments for fiscal year will be calculated based on the previous year's tax base multiplied by the new applicable rate, net of the impact of the tax credits mentioned in the following section, which I shall now announce where relevant. And what are these new tax credits, sir? In addition to existing allowances which are maintained, tax credits that meet the requirements of a qualified refundable tax credit under the Globe rules will be introduced. These credits, which shall be offset against any other tax liability for a period of 4 years, are offered to encourage growth, development, and employment in strategic sectors. The qualified refundable tax credits will be available to companies taxed at the rate of 9% and to companies subject to the qualified domestic minimum top-up tax. The credits proposed are as follows. 1. Qualified job credits. In the following sectors, a refundable qualified jobs credit for eligible payroll costs for designated activities will be introduced in the following sectors. 1. Fintech activities. 2. Wholesale distribution and trading without physical inventory or storage in Barbados. And 3. Research and development in medical, scientific, engineering, IT, AI, including AI, and other activities that will be determined by ministerial order. In addition, companies in the foregoing sectors must have the specified number of employees to qualify for the credit. The qualified jobs credit will be calculated on the average payroll cost on a sliding scale as follows. For the first 50 employees, a credit of 75%. From 51 employees to 100 employees, a credit of 175%. From 101 employees to 150 employees, a credit of 300%. From 151 to 200 employees, a credit of 400%. And for more than 200 employees, 475%. The maximum average qualified jobs credit shall not exceed 300% collectively. The eligible payroll costs means the expenditures for salaries, wages, as well as other employee benefits or remunerations such as medical insurance, national insurance contributions, payments to a pension fund or other retirement benefits, bonuses and allowance payable to eligible employees. Employees means a full-time employee as defined under Section 85(1) of the Income Tax Act, Chapter 73. The qualified jobs credit shall not be granted for eligible payroll costs that can reasonably be considered excessive and unreasonable in relation to the company's economic operations. Eligible payroll costs shall not be deemed excessive and unreasonable, provided they are ordinary and necessary business expenses incurred primarily for bona fide purposes other than to obtain the qualified jobs credit. The research and development credit is a new such credit. A credit of 50% of qualifying expenses incurred for qualifying research and development activities, and in addition to the qualified jobs credit outlined above. This credit may be made available to any company in Barbados which carries out basic research, applied research, or experimental research to innovate and to introduce new products and services approved by the Minister of Finance by order in the following sectors: medicine, science and technology, finance, information technology, including artificial intelligence, distillery and refinery, which I should have mentioned before under the qualifying jobs credit too, and any other industry added by ministerial order. It is anticipated, Mr. Speaker, that the country will seek particularly to attract also areas of research in the ocean and marine environment given the climate crisis that we face. Mr. Speaker, qualifying expenses include expenses for plant, equipment, and materials and assets used in qualified research and development activities, outsourcing expenses, local overhead expenses that support these activities. We, sir, Mr. Speaker, are early adopters of these rules, and we expect that there will be additional credits that we will announce. We are looking and examining and working very closely now on the introduction of a national development credit, which will focus on investment in projects in the country for low-income housing, historic buildings, public medical facilities, including hospitals and polyclinics, hospices, and public educational facilities up to the tertiary level. We also expect, Mr. Speaker, that as we go forward, we will also respond to the events of our times. As you know, Barbados has been a strong advocate for globally unlocking investment to address the challenges of the climate crisis. Many of you have heard of the Bridgetown Initiative. We want, therefore, to continue to refine the areas of activities in the blue and green economy that will help the world in building resilience, but help Barbados in particular. To that end, we will also be working on developing a tax credit that will address environmental, social, and governance issues, otherwise known as ESG issues. More details of these credits will be addressed early next year as we announce in next year the budget speech in March of 2024. As a result, we will expect there to be a working group on these areas, and there will also be the working group, as I pointed out earlier, on the area of international shipping, so that we can refine completely those other areas that we will want this country to be competitive in. Mr. Speaker, approximately 72% of our corporation taxes are paid by companies for whom the majority of their profits, if not all, are made outside of this country. And therefore, Barbadians cannot ignore the reality of this development. To put it another way, Bajans carry only 28% of the corporation taxes that are paid in this country. Last year, we collected just on or about $470 million in corporation taxes, and the majority of it was paid by global entities who have their domicile in this country, but for whom the majority of profits are not necessarily generated in Barbados. It has allowed us as a country to be able to do things that have eased the burden on the average Barbadian. It is to that end that we want to continue in this vein. The truth is that as a government, we said from the beginning in 2018, share the burden, share the bounty. And we have tried as a government to distribute the burden of taxation, not just on those who live here 365 days, but those who visit here and those who domicile here in order for the conduct of their business. This has allowed us, therefore, to anchor other tax policies at the current levels, supporting our continued investment in building strong social capital. The most recent example of it was the increase in the tax-free component of land taxes to $300,000 this year, which will mean that the average Barbadian who owns a house, or anybody who owns a house for that matter in Barbados, will not pay land taxes on the first $300,000. We made that promise and we've kept it. But in order to keep these promises, it means that we have to be able to ensure that the balance of our revenue is such that we can support both the conduct of governmental activities, but also ensure that we can pay down our debt on a trajectory that is comfortable. I therefore hope, sir, that citizens deeply appreciate that the share of the tax burden carried by Barbadians is indeed shielded by the performance of these companies. It therefore means, Mr. Speaker, that we have work to do. And as I say to my cabinet, if we don't fish, we don't eat. If we don't reap, we don't eat. And therefore, Barbadians must appreciate at all levels within the public and private sector that we must work each and every day to be fully competitive. It's for this reason, Mr. Speaker, when I was recently in Canada, I traveled there with the Director of Finance and the Revenue Commissioner of the Barbados Revenue Authority to engage in face-to-face meetings with principals of major stakeholders who have a long corporate history with our country. On Thursday this week, I traveled today, but on Thursday this week, I meet with the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, as I said, otherwise known as OECD, who is at the center of the imposition of these rules. I will also use the opportunity to meet with members of the French private sector in an effort to keep the business that we have there and to expand the business footprint that we need to in France and in Europe generally. Mr. Speaker, in addition, as I said, we do not believe that this ambition is beyond us. And we have set a clear ambition that we can be world-class by 2030. This, however, requires continuous changes and dialogue. And in the same way we met with stakeholders in Canada, I expect over the course of the next 2 to 3 months that we will also have to consolidate our existing business with respect to entities in the United Kingdom, Europe, the United States of America, and CARICOM, and as far as possible minimize, therefore, the downside risk. Mr. Speaker, do we expect some businesses to leave? Probably. But we do believe that all will not leave, and that we do believe that our continuous engagement with them can make the case for their remaining in Barbados, particularly since, with respect to tax rates, what is it that we're looking at? Other jurisdictions who are now tax havens will soon have to be able to make the changes that are here. And our early action is motivated more because of the fact that Canada is our predominant treaty partner. And Canada has indicated their adoption of the rules from 1st of January 2024. There are other countries in the region whose predominant business comes from the United States of America or from China, and they may have the luxury, therefore, of an additional year. We do not have that luxury because of our close relationship with Canada over the years. It therefore means, sir, that there is a downside risk. But at the same time, I can say comfortably that the ones with whom we have interacted thus far when I was in Canada have all committed to want to work with us through this transition period, and therefore to continue to pay taxes here. If companies don't go to those jurisdictions that may well end up having to change in a year, then they will ask themselves, do we stay in Barbados at 9%, or do we go to our own countries, most of whom in the North Atlantic have significantly higher tax rates? In the United Kingdom, they have now gone to 25%. In the United States of America, it is 21%. In France, it is 25%. In Canada, it is 25%. And Mr. Speaker, as I said, most of those other countries that have themselves sometimes been labeled as tax havens have varying tax rates to beyond the zero. And I won't go into all of them, but there is an appendix that we will also make available as to this statement. On a parallel track, sir, the government, in recognizing that we need to be aggressive in acquiring new business, will establish a standing task force on product development. Work has been done in the past, but we believe it needs to be a standing task force rather than a periodic and ad hoc one. And we will also have a separate standing task force on treaty negotiations to further market our investment and commercial opportunities in Barbados. If I may say, sir, the pace of work on treaty negotiations halted in large measure because of the failure of us and other countries to come to the point of doing what we are doing today. These changes will now make treaty negotiations imperative again, because the rules, the globe rules, literally undermine our capacity to remain in strong treaty relationships if we do not make the adjustments to become compliant with the globe rules. So that work will resume immediately. Alongside of this, sir, there must be a dedicated team focused on legislative drafting, and I've asked the Attorney General to work with others to ensure that there are at least 2 dedicated draftsmen engaged, recognizing that the one constant feature of this sector is, in fact, change. Mr. Speaker, if we can do these things, and if we can enhance our response time as a nation to make changes and to do the expanded treaties network, then I believe, sir, that we can bring substantially more business to our country. It is, however, going to be a transition, and I do not fool anyone about this, but we can do it. Over the past 5 years, our government has established new missions in Panama, in Ghana, in Kenya, in the United Arab Emirates, and now do so in Ireland. Each of these missions have been chosen specifically for the advent of a day such as this. We knew that we would have to expand beyond the traditional North Atlantic and CARICOM relationships, our expanded commercial relationships, our commercial diplomacy, so that we could garner new business. I'm satisfied, sir, that once we continue to cement these relations and accelerate initiatives to unlock opportunities for Barbadians in these regions, to bring new investment to our shores, we can make it through this challenging time. This important work also complements the decision that the Cabinet took just last week to establish an independent entity called Business Barbados. And this will house the corporate registry and the intellectual property registry, with a separate division as well focused purely on business facilitation in Barbados. Mr. Speaker, this is critical if we are to see greater efficiency in our regulatory compliance and in our business facilitation as a nation. We must now, therefore, engage with the workers and the representatives in the current institutions that exist to ensure that there is a seamless transition, and we will, of course, engage with all stakeholders across the private sector and the labor movement as well, who are not directly involved in this immediate transition. The initial feedback, Mr. Speaker, as I said, has been generally positive, but we genuinely do not know. We genuinely do not know where we will land until countries fully implement the rules. As the old people remind us of that phrase in the Bible, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things unseen, so that we must now be prepared not now to rely on faith, but we have to rely on actual achievements and action. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, that is one of the reasons we are transitioning to the monthly prepayment, so we do not have to wait until the end of the fiscal year to know what our fate shall be as a nation. Equally, we will review the performance of these reforms over the course of the next year in order to make a determination as to the future of the bank asset tax. Further, we have articulated to the OECD, last time I met with them, that as a small state, should there be any significant fall off in revenue in our attempt to be compliant with the Globe rules, we will argue strongly for compensation, not for speculative losses, but for actual losses below where we are with the receipt of corporation taxes. I do, however, hope that that will not be the case. Mr. Speaker, we have been in deep consultations with this sector, and we have been asked what the government will do should we get the extra revenue that we expect to get. In other words, should there be an upside benefit as opposed to a downside reality? You may recall, sir, that we have demonstrated our underlying philosophy this year to discharge our fiscal responsibility by reducing our debt, as I did in the budget of this year in March. When we have the capacity to pay down a little something, this government has always chosen to do that rather than to believe that we should leave everything to a future generation. Mr. Speaker, we will therefore maintain fiscal discipline as we have committed to throughout this entire period, and in accordance with the targets that we set in the BERT 2.0 program, which embeds long-term fiscal and debt sustainability. Sir, additional revenue accruing beyond what is therefore required for the attainment of these targets will be spent on Barbados' development trajectory via strengthening climate and economic resilience, improving our people's quality of life, and reducing poverty from our landscape in accordance with Mission 2030. In short, it is critical, sir, that this country stays laser-focused on sustaining development progress while maintaining fiscal discipline. We are in the position that we are in largely because of an absence of fiscal discipline over a prolonged period of time. Sir, we have already indicated that we will establish a legacy fund which will accommodate much of government's illiquid assets. In other words, a lot of its land that is sitting down there with nothing happening to it and with nothing but a book value remaining in a book. We will use that legacy fund to house these illiquid assets, but we will also use the legacy fund to deposit any surplus revenue beyond that which is needed to maintain fiscal stability and growth in the BERT 2.0 program. So if we get a bounty, which is a possibility, we cannot use all of it on current expenditure, but must be prepared, as has happened traditionally in our history, to use it to keep it for a rainy day. Mr. Speaker, the priorities for spending in that legacy fund with respect to any funds coming from surplus revenue from corporation taxes will be for improvements in our education system with heavy concentration on skills and digital skills development, the strengthening of our healthcare system, the building of resilience with increased spending on adaptation to mitigate climate change effects for our people and our businesses, for debt reduction, as I said, and for investing in the development of our young people, particularly through sports and cultural development. However, sir, while we anticipate, as I said, these positive risks, do not believe that there is not a downside risk, and I therefore say we must walk by sight and not by faith alone. The government remains therefore in dialogue with the companies and service providers to ensure that over the next 2-3 months, we can persuade as many of them to stay here and to mitigate the risk. In addition, Invest Barbados, as I said, is accelerating its investment promotion activities to match our commercial diplomacy footprint in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I therefore expect that in addition to consolidating the existing markets, Invest Barbados will engage investment promotion partners to work in Central and Latin America and to work in Africa and the Middle East and the Gulf states. Mr. Speaker, why are we doing what we are doing? Simply put, sir, the future of our country is at stake. And just as we did in 2018 when faced with a not too dissimilar situation, we determined that as a country and as a government, we have what it takes to weather the storm as it was at that time. We have been able to do so such that it helped us get through a pandemic. It helped us get through natural disasters that we had not faced in over 60 years. Mr. Speaker, we have a strong reputation as a country to protect, and therefore every effort must be made to protect all the attributes that this country of ours has to offer in order to strengthen our domestic base. Mr. Speaker, how will we get new business, both local and global? Mr. Speaker, we have determined that regulation must now not be an obstacle, but it must be a competitive advantage and used as a tool for growth, and that it must be appropriate to risk. There cannot be a one-size-fits-all measurement if we are effectively to move nimbly. Regulating for growth, therefore, must be our mantra in order to get Barbados to world-class status by 2030. Working with Invest Barbados, with the Barbados International Business Association, with the service providers, with our regulatory agencies, along with our full network of diplomatic missions abroad, we plan to bring true meaning to the phrase Business Barbados. Strong engagement and training across the public and private sectors, including the labor movement, therefore, will be critical to achieving this objective. And Mr. Speaker, why are we still a stable jurisdiction, Barbados? This country, sir, has a proud history in building strong social capital. It is our strength, our people. We have made a significant investment over the years, both pre-independence and post-independence, in education, health, and in the institutional capacity that has allowed us to punch above our weight more often than not. This long-term investment has now to be leveraged to engineer sustainable and inclusive economic growth. We have done well with engaging international partners, both in the international financial sector and as countries, sovereign states. We must do better in engaging industry and engaging academia in order to ensure that Barbados can be a domicile from which global business can be conducted. Mr. Speaker, I believe, my government believes, that our future can be bright. But that light will shine favorably only if each of us gets up each and every day to commit to achieving personal and world-class excellence. Forget the buzzwords in everything we do. In other words, that we go beyond what is our duty, whether we are working as an employee or whether we are seeking to invest as an entrepreneur. Mr. Speaker, the sum total of our efforts will make a difference to this country. And if we want to be able, therefore, to distance ourselves from others, then it is critical that each Barbadian sees that they have a responsibility under the Charter of Barbados to be able to go beyond our normal duty to ourselves, to our job, and to our family, and to add additional value to the output that we as a nation can put out. It, Mr. Speaker, is clear that the transition to this new corporate tax system will require the restructuring of existing regimes and will require the acceptance of doing new business in different ways in addition to maintaining old business. This restructuring, we believe, will be achieved through the operation of law and the policy directives which we have here, but can only come to full fruition when people meet policy and people meet laws to use them as competitive tools and not as obstacles to the conduct of business. I want to thank, sir, the members of the private sector, the accountants and the other service providers who have continued to work with us over the course of the last few months as we navigate yet another set of fundamental reforms. I would be lying to you if I did not say that I miss, and we miss deeply, the presence and involvement of Ben Arundel, who I believe only this weekend a tournament celebrating his name and honor was held, and regrettably, those of us who were deep in work could not attend that tournament, but we were there in spirit. I also want to thank the Barbados Revenue Authority, its leadership, and its staff, including those who came out from vacation and worked beyond the call of duty to allow us to be here today. And of course, I'd like to thank our external advisors who have worked with us equally in spite of the time differences and sometimes some very, very unsociable hours to allow us to be here today. And of course, I'd like to thank the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Finance, the member for Christchurch and Central, as well as the Director of Finance and Economic Affairs and the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, as well as Ambassador Dr. Maskell, and all other players with whom we consulted, including the Central Bank and others, to ensure that we are as sure-footed as possible in the changes that we are doing. All have worked exceedingly long and sociable hours to bring us into safe harbor, no pun intended. So as I close, Mr. Speaker, let me repeat. With this implementation of this new corporate tax regime, let us fully embrace global competitiveness. Let us invest in it. And let us invest in the training of our people to become one of the finest workforces globally with competitive skills. Mr. Speaker, we are not setting ourselves regional or hemispheric targets. Barbados can be a global destination of excellence once we put our minds to it. We have the core foundation. But we need now to ensure that, as I said, people meet policy and legal frameworks in order to create life and to earn for all of our people. So what is it, Mr. Speaker? The world is our business, and our business is the world. With the help of Barbadian people and all who call Barbados home, I have no doubt, sir, that we shall succeed. Global excellence with Barbadian values, that is and must always be the Barbadian way. God bless us and God bless this nation. I'm obliged to you. Take a 5-minute break. I need you to. Yeah, we can take longer time. We can go longer than that. Okay, fine. Adjourn to 12:30. Ryan. What do you do to me? You know, you give me a speech right there and back version.
Congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Honourable Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42, 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
The question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day sitting. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day sitting.
Government business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this sitting do stand suspended until 12:30.
The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until 12:30 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 12:30 p.m. This sitting is resumed.
Government business, sir.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 10, in the name of the Honourable Acting Prime Minister, to move the passing of a resolution to approve in accordance with Section 5 of the Crown Lands Vesting and Disposal Act, Chapter 225, the vesting in the National Housing Corporation of a parcel of land situate at Dawes Plantation in the parish of St. Philip in this island for residential, commercial, and recreational purposes.
Honourable for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. First, let me say that this resolution has been a long time in coming. And although it has taken some time to get here, I'm very happy that it is here. What we're seeking to do, Mr. Speaker, is a reallocation of approximately 48.43 acres, which is equivalent to 19.6 hectares, located at Dodds, St. Philip. Vesting the said land in the National Housing Corporation for residential, commercial, and recreational purposes. Let me say, Mr. Speaker, that when I was the Minister of Housing, we actually started this whole process together with the Minister of Housing that was before me, the former member for this House for the constituency of St. Andrew, to not only identify this land, but to design the road infrastructure that would go in and make available a significant number of plots for the people of Barbados. And unfortunately, as we know, and I lament all the time, government moves slow. And I am happy that we're able to do this resolution today, but unfortunately, it has taken an inordinate long period, and I apologize of the time that it has taken, and in my discourse, I'll explain a little bit about why it has taken so long. But we're here for the resolution, and that's the most important thing. As you know, Mr. Speaker, government is absolutely committed through its several policies to provide significantly improved housing opportunities and housing solutions for its people. Indeed, our mandate is to be able to provide 10,000 houses over the next 5 years. This is not only government providing 10,000 houses, but a collaboration between what government can provide as well as facilitating what the private sector entities can provide. And I'm happy to report that we're seeing some progress with private sector entities. You would have seen the developments at the Ridge, on both sides of the road as you move up to the Ridge, and we're seeing other private entities coming in to be able to provide housing solutions together and adding to the numbers being provided by the government of Barbados. So it is not at the pace that we appreciate, but it is something that we're moving towards to be able to provide good, quality, resilient houses for the people of Barbados. So way back in 2006, Mr. Speaker, the government agreed to an allocation of 244 acres of Crown lands at Dodds Estates for the integrated prison farm construction and for a new prison facility and continued use of the industrial school. It was also agreed that 23.17 hectares or 57 acres of the 244 acres would be leased to the Barbados Correction Corporation to facilitate the construction of the new prison. This was when the new prison was as you know, the prison burned down at Glenderry from your constituency, I believe, Mr. Speaker. And we then had to have a temporary housing and then move them up to Dodds where the new prison was done. So part of that land is lands that we are now vesting in the National Housing Corporation. For those of you who know the road, if you're driving going towards the east, the prison and the prison fence is on the right-hand side. The lands in question that we are looking to vest are essentially on the left-hand side that we currently call Dodds North, but we're hoping to rename that as Concordia Gardens North. And the reason why we denote it as Concordia Gardens North, as once this resolution passes, and I assume it will pass with the members of the House showing their support for providing housing solutions for the people of Barbados. But there will be another time we come back with another resolution for Concordia Gardens South. So that's why we delineated it between north and south. Two different parts, but essentially both for housing for the people of Barbados. So planning permission for the subdivision was sought from June of 17, 2020. And now that we've got the subdivision, we then had to go into, after getting the subdivision, which took some time, we then actually had to go in, do the assessments for the roads, do the surveys of the geotechnical surveys to see and design the road and get that through the planning process as well. And I'm happy to report that after we've done that, we were able to design the road. Road has started and all of the infrastructure is in place, and all we now need to do is do the vesting so that we can then dispose of these lands to the people who would benefit to get house spots and housing solutions on that area. What took us a significant number of time, though, Mr. Speaker, is this. On an adjoining property, not the place where we are putting the housing solutions, but an adjoining property, there was an area that some of the sludge from the careenage was removed and stored there. So as an abundance of caution to make sure that the area that we're doing, so that no leachate, to make sure no leachate or anything came across from one section to the other, we entered into a program to test and retest and double test and triple test. Not only the lands where the sludge was put, but also the adjoining lands at multiple areas all through the development. And those tests were sent to the University of the West Indies and their labs abroad to confirm them as well and double test them. And what we found that there was nothing in that leachate or in the surrounding area that could cause any concern for the people that would be occupying the area. In addition, what we're doing with that area of land is that will become part of the green space, because obviously when we do a development, you have a green space so people can have a football, netball, all those kinds of sports to have a green space, and for people to walk and enjoy the area as well. And then there was a playing field that the prison service used to use. We're going to move that playing field a little bit more to the east, I believe it is, so that they will not be disadvantaged by losing a playing field, but they will get the opportunity for a whole development over this 19 hectares and give those people an opportunity. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, to be very clear, the reason we first looked at this project was because we have a significant problem still existing, reduced it somewhat, but significant problem still existing at Rock Hall, which is the area next to the airport. And you would recall when we were at the other place in Worthing, when I spoke about moving those people that were living on what used to be a dump. And let's be straightforward. Used to be a dump that people have built their houses on, which has significant gases emanating from it, radon, methane, all those things, which put them at a significant health risk. So we've started that process. We've moved some of the residents, those that were under the poverty line, be it at Carpenter's Glade, be it at Parish Land, be it at Leadville. We were able to move some of the residents, but not all. And other residents who are above the poverty line, rather than providing housing for them, we provide a house spot and they can move themselves over to this new house spot with a grant of a determined amount to be able to give them an opportunity to move off of what we know is an existing dump. And it is a benefit to them from a health point of view, and it is also a benefit to the security of the airport. As I said, even then, Mr. Speaker, if you could imagine a fire there with methane emanating, with the smoke that would drift from the east-west direction over to the airport, and the number of houses that are there and the risks to those people, it would be huge. So, and I think government has a duty and a responsibility to be able to move those people, put them in better surroundings, and that is exactly what we're trying to do through this resolution. And that this vesting then in National Housing Corporation will give some of them an opportunity to be able to move their houses from where they are to the new, the new location. It will not only be them. In addition, we will also make some of the house spots available to people working in the government sector, preferably, as you know, the same as we did with the whole program, with nurses, teachers, policemen, also getting an opportunity to get house spots and make those house spots available for them as well. Because although as a government we provide houses, it's not everybody that wants a house. Some people have a friend or a family member who's a carpenter, a mason, whatever. Some people like to try their hand themselves. And once they get the appropriate permissions to make sure that they build into the standards that we expect, go and build their houses. Some people build in parts. It's often tradition in Barbados, you build the front house, you come out, you ain't paying the rent, you live in that, you add on a piece. Then when those two finish, you add on another. And some people do that and have done it very successfully for years. It's not unknown to the Barbadian culture, and it's what we imagine that some people who want house spots will be able to do that. And this, together with the other DODs that will then be coming back to this Parliament for, will give people an opportunity to get a house spot. Because not everybody that wants a house. So I look forward to getting this done. Another area that some people will be relocating to is the Constitution River redevelopment. As you know, Mr. Speaker, we've done a significant amount of work redeveloping Constitution River, but there are about 8 or 10 residents in there that should they want to relocate to that area as well, they'll be given an opportunity for some of these house spots as well. So if you think, Mr. Speaker, the average of an acre of about 46,000 square feet, and you do 5,000 square foot house spots, you could imagine you get about 8 or 9 house spots from each acre. So that would give you an indication as to how many house spots will be made available here for the people of Barbados. This, I think, will add significantly to our goal of providing those 10,000 houses. But it means getting the roads in. Roads have gone in. I'm quite satisfied with the quality of the road structure. There's still some drainage issues that they've been working on, which we knew were going to take some time from the topography of the road, of the area, because it's not a simple area to be able to do the topography. There were some soft spots in the foundation. We were able to get those cleared out, get all the pretty much the majority of the drainage situation is done. The only thing now is for the resolution to pass to be able to vest this in the National Housing Corporation. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, with those words, I propose that in accordance with the provisions of Section 5 of Crown Lands Vesting and Disposal Act, Cap 225, that the 19.6 hectares of land be now vested in the National Housing Corporation for residential, commercial, and recreational purposes, and I ask that this resolution do now pass.
Honourable Member for Christchurch. Honourable Member for Christchurch East. Honourable Member for St. Philip South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it would be remiss of me if I didn't rise before Christchurch East to speak on this resolution, which applies to a place where I grew up, near Church Village. And therefore, I deem it necessary for me not to speak for very long, but to certainly support this resolution, simply because I am of the view that we have done quite a bit as a government since 2018. We have had a very robust approach to housing solutions in Barbados. But I do agree with the acting Prime Minister that the process sometimes can be so slow that it may appear as though you're not moving at the pace that is required to meet the expectations of people who are in need of housing. Now, this 48.43 acres of land located at Dawes in St. Philip is just adjacent from a place called Garner's Land. And Garner's Land is in Church Village, where I grew up playing cricket on that spot. Where we are putting this housing project now used to be a cane field, which carried a variety of cane called 151. And therefore, after playing cricket, we will make our way across to that playing field to make sure that whilst the canes are being harvested, we can enjoy some soft 151 cane for refreshment. So in truth and in fact, this location is dear to my heart. Mr. Speaker, I do strongly support this resolution. And I would just like to point out a couple of things so that I can set the record clear in terms of the expectations of people in St. Philip, many of whom might hear about this resolution and want to participate. And I will be the first to say that it is my belief that the acting Prime Minister and the substantive Minister of Housing will make it a priority to make sure the people of St. Philip are accommodated accordingly. I'm not one who's going to throw numbers, but I've already been approached by people from Church Village who have said to me, what is it they're doing? I see all this land being excavated and roads put in, and it's adjacent to the cave that we used to play in. And so therefore, if there's any housing going on there, how can we participate? Now, I have referred all of them to the National Housing Corporation, as is my duty to do. But I stand here on this floor of Parliament to make sure that a clear message is sent that the people of St. Philip should be given their just worth. Now, the acting Prime Minister and Honourable Member for Christchurch West spoke about Rock Hall. I too, with a very human heart, would like to see that those people are moved from Rock Hall in the fastest possible way. I drive there on a daily basis, and I think it is only a matter of time before something can happen, because the amount of people who have moved into that area doesn't argue well for us to allow for that to continue. Now, I have heard a lot of comments about this. Sometimes the conversation being reduced to nothing more than sententious bombast, where people feel that they can say anything to the public and get support because people now are prepared to rely on lies more than let the truth prevail. And what has become common in this country, sir, is that you would get the impression when you listen to certainly those who oppose us and those who want to lend voice to what is currently happening in Barbados, you would feel as though they're suggesting to the country that nothing has happened in this country since 2018. And that amazes me, because the amount of people that we have had to bring housing solutions for, either by way of solutions with rebuild or repairs under Hurricane Elsa, in my constituency for sure, I have seen all the replacements, and right across Barbados you can see them. Mr. Speaker, housing repairs through the RDC as well. People are either getting material or getting their houses repaired. And I can go on and on with what is taking place for housing in Barbados and how people are being accommodated. But if you only listen to the conversation, especially the conversations on the calling program, where the calling programs have been reduced to such an all-time low, you will probably want to feel that the management who's running these programs have changed, and they have sunken somewhere into nadir, and therefore anything goes. Because I am in awe when people are allowed to call and give this country the impression that nothing works and nothing has happened for people in Barbados after Hurricane Elsa. That nothing works and nothing has happened for people in Barbados who are living below the poverty line when the RDC is rolling out a whole lot of repairs and housing replacements for people, especially the senior citizens in this country. And Mr. Speaker, this project will be one of many that we would see across Barbados that I sure would help us to bring relief to those people who are heavily dependent on government for support, and those people who are within a certain income group who will not otherwise qualify to get a mortgage. And therefore, and I think this needs to be emphasized, that those people can go to the National Housing Corporation and enter into a rent-to-own program that allows them to be an owner of a piece of this rock in Barbados. And Mr. Speaker, if we are to look at what is about to happen here at Dodds, I believe the opportunity for people who are within that income group that does not qualify them for a loan should be able then to take advantage of the opportunity that is available to them in order for them to be able to have a roof over their head and own a piece of the rock. Mr. Speaker, if you were to pass through 6 roads, 4 roads, Church Village, Merrick's, you would see that we have hundreds upon hundreds of young people who are either in need of government support for employment, in need of the MP's support for guidance, in need of a solution, Mr. Speaker, in order for them to be able to access the things that they're not certain about. Housing is one. When I sit in my constituency office clinic and I realize that people come to me with a perception that they only need to go to the MP and say, I want a house, and you're going to pull one out of a box and say, here is a house. Because they essentially don't understand. And I think that we have reached the point now in our development that we should be able to help people to understand processes. How do I go about applying for a house? And if in truth and in fact you need your MP support, that support should only come by way of guidance and by way of helping you break through some of the bureaucracy that may stand before you. But it's really not possible for an MP to push his or her hand in a bag and say, here's a house because you've asked. And I feel that I have the need and responsibility to put that on the floor, sir, because unless we address these issues, those expectations will continue and people will not trust us. What is worse about it is that when those who seek to unseat us continue to give them the impression that, yes, this is the way it's done and it can be done, only getting themselves involved in the political perfidy that has continued to permeate this country, sir, then I recognize we would have a problem. But I equally want to say to Barbadians that whilst it is true that you want to hear about the issues, and whilst it is true that you want to know what is going on from the voices of the others who are opposing us, it is a terrible thing when you're being fed blatant lies in the name of political power. And if someone can stand before you, march in town, go all across Barbados, have meetings, go to the press and call conferences, and all they do is seek to mislead innocent people in this country in the name of political power, sir, then I say to you, if that person should gain political power, the people in this country will suffer by their behavior because they will do nothing other than what they're accustomed doing, and that is to mislead the innocent. Sir, I am putting this before this House because I know before we leave here, the conversation about housing is going to be one to which people are going to be blatantly misled about this very project. The fact that we have mentioned Rock Hall will lead to all kinds of accusations, sir. I am acutely aware of all that was said before. My posture remains the same. What do you do to people who are in danger? Do you chase them under a tree? Do you ask them to go in the rain? Do you ask them to go and break in somebody's place? What do you do? My position is a very simple one. There are people who chose to be on the streets, but we have found places for people which is called shelter or a place for the homeless. There are people who have chosen not to work, but we have found support for them through a system called welfare. There are people who cannot afford to feed themselves or feed their family, can't afford to pay their bills. We have either mustered up support for them through our constituency offices or through the same welfare or through various government programs. How can anybody with a conscience tell me that a person who couldn't find anywhere at all to live must find shelter for family, must find shelter for self, and therefore went and rig up a structure on a dump should not be delivered and given help? I stand to await the answer from those with a conscience, because I expect those without a conscience to say anything to the contrary. But I believe, sir, that this situation is such that a responsible and caring government should ignore the rhetoric and do that what is right by the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, that plus all the people who are in Gemswick, who have come to my office, the people in St. Martin's and Fall Bay, and of course, 6 Roads and 4 Roads, I am appealing, sir, to the substantive minister and the acting prime minister who piloted this resolution to make sure that they are in good standing. And sir, with those few words, I wish to support this resolution.
Honourable for Christchurch East.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to follow my good friend, who I gave way to. Had I known that he was going to admit to predial larceny, I might have been a little bit less reluctant and have cautioned him, but luckily what he says in here is privileged. Sir, I'm speaking because this initiative was land that fell under the jurisdiction of Dodds Prison. So it was pretty much under the control of the Ministry of Home Affairs. And we did have some plans for it. But that is the benefit, sir, of being pretty much one government and obeying the one government philosophy. That it is not about operating in silos. It is not about me jealously guarding the perimeters of my ministry, but rather seeing the plan as a whole, embracing the plan, reaching out and shaking hands, and doing what I can to advance the just causes of another ministry or the overall benefit of Barbados. So when I was approached by the Minister of Housing, the Honourable Member for St. George South, about his plan to develop that area, we were actively in the process of engaging our plan. And I had a conversation with the Honourable Member and also the Honourable Member for Christchurch West. And the government has certain priorities. One of the priorities of this government is to house and provide housing solutions for Barbadians. It is one of our most ambitious policies. It is one of our most touted policies. It's one of our most honourable policies. So we had to weigh the plans we had for it as a prison, sir, against the possibility of housing a couple hundred Barbadians in an area that was conducive for housing. And we did so. There were some concerns initially about the proximity to Dodds Prison, the safety aspect of it, whether it compromised the integrity of the prison, whether it exposed the persons who were living there to any danger. And we met on site. It was a large meeting because I went up and saw it with the Honourable Member for Christchurch West. And we decided to just bring everybody up there so we can see, pace it, look at it, examine it. So we had, at that meeting, sir, representatives from, I think, the Barbados Police Service. We had representatives from Dodds Prison. We had representatives from housing, from environment, from everybody. And we literally walked the area. We walked the area and we considered on the spot all of the concerns. We didn't make decisions behind cloistered walls, having no reference to the reality of it, but we made the decisions based on what was in front of us. And the reality for those who are concerned is that the actual area which houses the prisoners at Dodds is far from that actual area. So you have the immediate precincts of Dodds Prison. You then have a buffer area that I think at the time of COVID, we had staged the prison officers who were on shift there. Prison most recently held in that same area on the paved section. They held the Mr. and Mrs. Prison competition. So it's an area that's in general use that is separated far enough from the immediate precincts of the space occupied by the inmates to not be a security risk. But in addition to that, the decision was made to even set back a little bit further. Bear in mind, sir, that the outer perimeter of the prison ends with a public road running alongside of it. So the reality, people want to make sure every I is dotted, every T is crossed, and sometimes we overanalyze things. But quite frankly, there could be no increase in issues by having a housing development on the other side of the road than you have for people passing right by the extremity of the prison in vehicles or walking or whatnot. A number of people raised the questions, what if people throw things from the housing area into the prison? But there's nothing stopping people from throwing things from the road into that buffer area, where prisons are not supposed to be anyhow. So at the end of it, sir, some accommodation was made to satisfy the concerns of even the most sensitive in a setback of the houses from right next to the roadway. It allows for the creation of a green space as well. I think they plan to plant some trees, and I believe that Minister Ford is going to come in there and do his thing, probably have a park or something, right? But at the end of the day, it is going to be set back, A, for aesthetics, and B, for security purposes and security reasons. I can say that having spoken to the superintendent of prisons, the Barbados Prison Service is exceedingly comfortable with the development happening there. I have spoken to some of the persons in the area who are actually looking forward to more things happening there, because the more things that happen in the community, the better infrastructure you get. If you have more people there, you're going to have an increased bus service. You're probably going to have more attention paid to the roads. Other infrastructure developments are going to happen. So all in all, sir, although we lose what it is that we had initially planned the area for, I can say that when I weigh the scales tipped seriously and generously in favor of putting the housing development there. So I have advised the Minister of Housing, the Honourable Member for St. George South. I've also advised the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, the Senior Minister for Infrastructure and Development, that we fully support this development. I hope that it brings the anticipated benefits to the persons in St. Philip and in that area. It will definitely liven things along what is pretty much a dead stretch, and it will probably make good use of an area which, quite frankly, sir, was doing nothing. And although we had plans for it, I think it is much better served by the provision of housing solutions for Barbadians who otherwise might not have the chance to own their piece of the rock. So having said all of that, sir, I fully support this resolution. Thank you.
Honourable for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. First, let me thank the two members who spoke. The member for St. Philip South, who spoke very passionately, of course, because a number of people who reside in his constituency will in fact be beneficiaries of some of the house spots that will be created here and vested in the National Housing Corporation. And the member for Christchurch East, who spoke as he reminded me and the Honourable House that we had meetings at the site to make sure that the administration of the neighboring prison on the other side of the road is comfortable. But clearly, as you know, Mr. Speaker, in your constituency of Glenderry, you had houses literally on the wall, with no road between them. And the Glenderry prison was there from, I think, the 1800s. and it was and coexisted very, very comfortably in a community. And in fact, there are many places I could think of Miami, where there are correctional facilities right in the middle of areas where people live, and so on, very close proximity. So I am comfortable, as is the administration from the prison. We're taking additional measures, as the Prime Minister said, belt, braces, and hoists, to be able to make sure that there is that separation and no risk to the security of the people of the prison. But I think more importantly, Mr. Speaker, it is to be able to provide an opportunity for Barbadians to better themselves, to have, as members said, a piece of the rock, to give people a chance to improve their lots. And as I say all the time, Mr. Speaker, life is about opportunities and taking charge and taking grasp when you have an opportunity and working with that opportunity to improve yourselves and improve your family. And if we have a chance to be able to give a better opportunity and a better space for people who are currently in unacceptable conditions, we have a duty and a responsibility to do that. And that's exactly what this resolution will do. This will give people a chance and an opportunity to improve themselves, better facilities, better road infrastructure, better access to facilities like water, electricity, things that they don't really know have where they are. You know, there are people in that whole area that selling electricity hookups from half a kilometer, well, not half a kilometer, but several hundred feet away, selling water in tanks, and then you got to carry it through because they don't have a proper water infrastructure. They don't have proper electricity infrastructure. They don't have proper roads, proper drainage, nothing. And these inappropriate settlements, we have to improve. And as a caring government, we have to make sure that we do what is important and do what is best for all of our people, not some of our people, but for the whole. And with those two words, Mr. Speaker, I would ask again that this resolution do not pass.
The questions that the aforementioned resolution do not pass. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed. Honourable member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, with that, we've come to the end of today's business of Parliament. I beg to move that the House does now adjourn itself to Tuesday, 14th at 10 a.m.
Questions that this honourable chamber be adjourned until Tuesday, the 14th day of November 2023 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands adjourned until the 14th day of November 2023 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.